So back in 2012, before I made videos and before I had a YouTube channel, I was kidnapped by a Mexican cartel. It's a true story. It actually happened. I'm not proud of this story. It's actually embarrassing and reckless, and I'm lucky to be alive. This type of situation usually turns out to be really bad. So I wasn't sure whether or not I was actually going to tell it, but here we are. Let's do it. So what I learned from this experience is that I'll never go back to a country where organized crime is prevalent and right out there in the open where you can see it. There's just so many other places that I can go where I'll be safe. I know thousands of people are going to Mexico. They're having a wonderful time and meeting the friendliest people ever. But for me, it's over. It's done. I'll never go back. So I'm going to start preparing dinner for tomorrow night, some carne asada. I've got the cube steak, jalapeno, cilantro, lime, orange juice, soy sauce, olive oil, cumin, salt and pepper. I'm going to put this all in the pot, stir it up, let it sit overnight. The longer you leave it, the more delicious it will be. So the setup to this story, I was on my first ever bicycle tour, and this was also really the first ever time that I'd set off into the world all on my own. And like I said, this was before I took videos. I don't even think I have any photos of this trip. I was just out there for my own enjoyment. So I was working as a welder in Guelph, Ontario. I quit that job on a Friday, then a couple days later I was ready to roll. I already had a bicycle and all the gear. I'd done a couple weekend trips just to get the hang of things, but yeah, this was really the first time that I'd set off on something big. At the time, I had an iPhone 4S, and I was trying to live cheap, so I didn't even have cell service on it. What I was doing, every time that I could find Wi-Fi, I'd use Google Maps and just plan out a few days ahead, up until the point where I could find another McDonald's or library, somewhere to get on the internet and plan out a little more. So I stopped here because I'm going to need some firewood to cook that meal tomorrow night. The top half of this tree broke off about a month ago, and I've been coming here to cut some slices off it for my wood stove, but it's been raining for the past week, so it's all soaked through. I'll see if I can find something better. The best thing is to find some standing dead with its top still on it. That's the driest. I don't know how this piece got here, but maybe I'll try this, and I won't even have to split it. I forgot to put the garlic in with my carne asada. So I pedaled away from Guelph all the way to Newfoundland. I took the ferry out to Blanc Sablon. I rode the whole Trans-Labrador. That was back when it was still new and under construction. 1,600 kilometers of gravel, dust, and black flies like you wouldn't believe. It was pretty nuts. And I went straight down the East Coast. I went through Boston, New York City, right through downtown Manhattan, then to Miami, then up and around to Houston. That was 4 months on the road, about 15,000 kilometers. Never paid for camping once. Stealth camped every single night, just whenever I was tired, pull off and find a place to sleep. I met so many nice people, had so many great experiences. It was quite the trip. So the thing about bicycle touring is that you're always being noticed. If a couple hundred cars pass you in a day, then that's a lot of eyes on you. So when you roll into town, you're guaranteed a conversation or three. People just want to know more, where you came from, where you're going. Sometimes people say that they saw you like 3 days ago way back on the highway, and sometimes people offer you a place to stay and a meal. People can be very generous, but yeah, you're just always being noticed. So the plan was to continue down the east all the way to Cancun, then come back up on the west side up through the Baja. So I headed across the border just a little bit east of McAllen. I was well aware of how dangerous it was. I was following all the news stories, but I was also following some other bicycle tourists, and it looked like they're having an alright time. So I went for the border crossing. They searched through all my bags. I'm pretty sure it was just a big scheme to try and steal a few things off me, but I was through and onto these quiet secondary roads. Normally in Canada and US, when you're on a quiet road, it's nice and relaxing, but this was different. There were all these beat up vehicles passing me with no license plates. There were abandoned houses all along the side of the road. It just felt really tense. Rocco almost made it all the way to the top on her own. When she starts to get cold, she lets me know. There's a lot of activity in this area, logging, and there's some mining down there too. But yeah, a nice little summit here in the Canadian Rockies. So that part of Mexico is all flat and barren. There's no trees, just all open land. So it's really hard to find a place to hide for the night. I was having the same problem in Texas. I was dedicating the last 2 hours of my day just to try to find a place to sleep. So I was riding all day in Mexico. I was tired, needed somewhere to stay. Then I came along this abandoned shack, and it was the only choice. So I waited until the traffic was clear. Then I gunned it over there, went inside. It was all rotten. There was glass on the floor and spiders everywhere, but that's all there was. So that's where I was going to stay. It'd be nice to do my campfire cook up here where it's scenic, but the wind is just ripping, so I gotta get myself down lower. So at first I just put my air mattress on the ground and tried to fall asleep on that. I could feel something really big crawl across the top of my head. I think it was a scorpion, so I decided to set up the inside mesh part of my tent, and I fell asleep inside that. Then around about 2 a.m., I could hear some vehicles coming down the road, so I looked at the front window, and there's about 6 vehicles coming really slowly, all with their headlights off. And they stopped right in front of where I was sleeping. They all started getting out of their vehicles, so at that point, I knew they were there for me. I didn't really care about my bike and my gear that much. It wasn't worth my life, so I went out the back door, and I started jogging off into the field. There must have been a full moon because it wasn't that dark out, and they could clearly see me. They let off 2 warning shots, and at that point I knew it was over. A couple guys came out. They hit me in the face with the butt of their gun. Then they walked me back to their vehicle with a gun to my head, and then a couple guys gathered up my bike and all my gear, threw it in the back of the truck, and we were off to their hideout. So I've got some Roma tomatoes and jalapeno. I've already cut the stems and everything out of it. This has got to be roasted over the fire later. Then some flour tortillas. It's better if you can find corn, but this is all I could find locally. So their camp was only 5 minutes away from where I was sleeping. I picked the absolute worst place to spend the night. So there's about 30 guys. All of them had machine guns, shotguns, handguns, bulletproof vests. There was one guy who could speak English, so he was translating. There was a big pool of blood on the ground. They told me that was from the last guy that they captured. And then they just went through all my stuff and took whatever they wanted and asked me a bunch of questions. They wanted to know all about me, where I came from, what I was doing there. And then I just sat there and waited out the night, waited for morning to come. Wow. That was just the best thing ever. It's so good to be cooking over a fire again. So in the morning, I had no idea what was going on or what to expect. I got into a truck with a couple guys and we started driving way out through these fields. I thought they were just looking for a place to dump my body and that would be the end of it. But it turned out we went to the ocean and they bought some fish. Then we went back to the camp. They fried it up and I actually had a really nice breakfast with these guys. So they did show me some hospitality, even though they were the scariest people that I've ever met in my life. Sometimes they just point a gun at you and start laughing, but yeah, after that, they all cleaned up the camp, made it look like no one was there. Then they just all went in their own separate directions. But for me, they loaded me up with my bicycle in a truck, and they blindfolded me. We started taking these back roads. I guess they were trying to avoid police checkpoints. But then we ended up at this auto wrecker mechanic place, and I gave them my PIN number, and a couple of them went into the bank and got some money out. And that was the end of it. I was free to go. I feel like I was let off really easy. I got to keep my bike and all my gear. I didn't bother talking to the police or anything. I just went straight back to the States and took a plane back to Ontario. I was feeling like a scattered mess and it was just over. So yeah, one day in Mexico and kidnapped. It's a terrible statistic to have on your resume, so I'll never go back. So yeah, just be very careful where you spend your time. And that's the story. So thanks for watching and thanks for coming along. Thank you to Patreon supporters, and I will see you in the next episode.